Hello, everyone, and welcome to another wonderful, exciting, amazing, spectacular, sensational episode of the Ultimate Comics Podcast. I'm Nabeel Gaber, and I'm one of your hosts.
And I'm Josh Kang, the other host.
And this is a podcast where we talk about Ultimate Marvel, an imprint of Marvel Comics that began in the year 2000 in an attempt to reimagine and modernize Marvel and its characters for the modern day 21st century audience, maybe make things more accessible for new readers. Josh and I have been going through a handful of issues every episode, going chronologically through the Ultimate Universe, giving our thoughts, what we like, what we don't like, what hasn't aged so well, what still holds up, how it's affected adaptations in the movies, TV, all that good stuff. This week, we're back to Ultimate Spider Man, or I guess this is more of a crossover because we're talking about Ultimate Six, a big crossover between Ultimate Spider Man and the Ultimates.
Nabeel, the Ultimate Comics ran from 2000 to 2015. So this was released in 2003. So we actually did 3 years worth of Ultimate Comics on our podcast, and we're 1/5 of the way through.
That's crazy to think about. Three
I
years
know.
already.
3 years already, and especially if you consider the fact that much of our listeners, but you and I know, towards the end, Ultimate Comics does lose issues, and they do less stuff as X-16 regains its dominance in the Marvel world. So, like, we've actually
Mm-hmm.
done probably like a bulk of what we need to do.
Yeah, we've done we've done a lot of the good stuff, anyways. Before it gets, I mean, we haven't gotten to Ultimate Fantastic Four or anything.
Yeah, and I'm excited for Ultimate Fantastic Four. I really like Ultimate Fantastic Four.
Yeah, and there's still a lot of Ultimate Spider-Man that we have to get through, and that I think still holds up throughout its run.
Oh yeah,
Or the Ultimates 2 for that matter. I like the Ultimates 2.
yeah. A lot of the stuff that even the stuff that doesn't hold up is still a fun read. I think for Ultimate X-Men it gets a little weirder, but like a lot of Millar's other stuff does hold up. Bendis' stuff definitely holds up. We also have to discuss whether we want to read the weird Ultimate Comics crossovers with 616 that will show up in 616 comics. I was reading this during COVID. There's going to be a crossover with regular X-Men and Ultimate X-Men.
Oh, really? Which comic was
Yes,
that?
it's the one. It's the like to be fair, it's one of the weirder 616 stories. It's where they bring the old X-Men from the 60s back to modern day times, and then once they go back to modern day times, they then travel to the Ultimate Universe where they meet up with the survivors of the Ultimate X-Men.
Oh, you're talking about All New X-Men?
See,
Oh no.
yes,
I don't like All New X-Men.
come on, they fight Doctor Doom, who we haven't even introduced yet. You know, like the greatest hero in Marvel. We haven't even talked about him yet in this podcast.
Yeah, I know. Shout out to one of our followers, True Latvarian. I feel like that will be a great day
Is that
when
actually
True
one of our
Latvarian gets to hear us talk about Ultimate Doctor Doom.
Is that really one of our followers' names?
Yep, True Latvarian.
Well, shout out to our Latvian American fans. You know,
Yeah, we've got the
so
Italians and now we've got the Latvarians.
I know, like same thing. One's a real country, one's not a real country.
It's up to you to decide which one is which.
Hey, and look, I'm from California. California didn't used to exist. It was just a name in a novel, and then one day Spanish explorers found this place that had already had people on it technically, and they called it California. One day we're gonna colonize Mars, and we're just gonna call a place there Latveria, probably, because that's how the world works.
I mean, the inner nerd in me would love that, although colonizing anything just sounds problematic to me, so.
I bet like if you lived in the 1400 or the 1500s and you found out about like, hey, you read this book about a land called California, and then you find out in the newspaper we're creating they found a continent and they're gonna call it California. You're gonna feel real conflicted about it. You're like, hey, the inner nerd of me loves the fact they're just naming a continent or a place after this fictional country, but it's also colonization.
Well, anyways, past colonization, what did you think of these issues, Josh?
I like them. They actually were one of my favorite comics. I think I read so far of Ultimate Marvel, and I think up there with Ultimatum, Miles Morales, The Death of Spider-Man, and some of the other stuff. This is actually up there. I think in terms of what people think of when they think of Ultimate Marvel.
You're not saying that Ultimatum is good, though.
I think Ultimatum is problematic, but I think it's something. It's very memorable. And I think when a lot of fans think of the Ultimate Universe, Ultimatum is up there what they think of.
Yeah, because it's infamous for destroying the universe.
Yeah, like and to be fair, I think so. Like you might correct me, but so this is the impression that stuck in my head. I read this one as a kid, Doctor Doom comic, where he works with different villain groups and they fight different hero groups. Spider-Man villains are generally not respected. They're kind of like street level thugs with like
Mm-hmm.
powers and suits. And like there was a comic where Doctor Strange and the Avengers just wreck through the Sinister Six. Like they easily defeat the Sinister Six and they
Yeah,
go like oh, Spider-Man has problems with these, no wonder he's a street level guy. In this one, like the ultimate villains are souped up to an extent that they literally do fight the Avengers and like they put up a decent fight against the Avengers in a way Sinister Six doesn't in 616. Like they're given an upgrade, I feel, in the Ultimate Universe because of stuff like this.
yeah. And just to add context, Ultimate Six, for those of you who don't know, introduces the ultimate version of the Sinister Six, Spider Man's famous Rogues Gallery team up. That usually, it was originally formed in the 60s, and that group consisted of Doc Ock, Vulture, Electro, Sandman, Craven, and Mysterio. And it was originally just a very fun, goofy team, but it lasted and endured throughout the years and has become a big staple and fan favorite. And it was very exciting to see this group come together in the ultimate version and see how different it is from that original team. And I think, especially like you're saying, Josh, become a legitimate threat for the Ultimates because they have some serious firepower behind them.
Yeah.
And I don't think there are a lot of big, serious supervillains in Ultimate at this point in the universe, other
Yeah.
than Magneto, who's already been locked up, and there's a lot of factions of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants and stuff. But I think the Sinister Six in this are very threatening and very powerful and menacing.
Yeah. And I think they're menacing and threatening in a way they're not even in 616. They are like a national level threat. Like if they're
Yeah, they're going for more than just, oh, we want to kill Spider-Man like they do in the original comics. Spoilers, but they go straight for the White House for this one. This becomes very political very quickly. They're like, we're going to make history, boys. Time to storm the White House. Which, yikes, kind of predicted some things.
Yeah, but in 616, the regular Sinister Six don't have the firepower to go after the White House. In fact, in real life, if they were grabbed from the comics and placed in real life, they do not have the firepower to take out the White House. They do in Ultimate Universe, and there's a very good reason for that. They're just like so much more messed up. It's like Sinister Six from 616 if they've been juicing the entire time and they
Yeah, they
just
got
show
some
up
raw firepower. Yeah.
and they just they could you could bring the army in. They could just throw tanks around realistically.
No, that is true.
Yeah, especially because I think one weird thing is that the Sinister Six so far, the characters in the Sinister Six in the Ultimate Universe, have not been very smart. They're not really diabolical. In this one, Doctor Octopus and Norman Osborn get more lucid, which is always like a bad sign. I feel because those guys are kind of really cunning as characters. So far, when we've seen Doctor Octopus or Norman Osborn, they kind of were just maniacs. And
Yeah,
now they're like lucid, and honestly, that just makes them a threat on a different level. Especially because Norman Osborn is not just like a physical threat; he just does straight out white collar crime as well.
yeah. It's serious, legitimate threats to national security rather than just we're going to go out and we're going to terrorize a high school or rip off a power plant or something,
Yeah,
which is still pretty dangerous and threatening, but also I think the threat that the Sinister Six pose here is real and legitimate. And that's why the Ultimates have to get involved.
I think in the comic, like in the panels, they show Shield, the Army, the FBI, and the Ultimates just being deployed at once. And also, and like
Yeah.
honest, that's four groups, and the Sinister Six go through three of them pretty easily.
Yeah, that's true. Well, Why don't we just get into it then so we can
Yeah.
talk further about this? We're going to start off just briefly going over Ultimate Spider Man number 46, which we skipped over because this is actually more just like a prologue in all the collected editions of Ultimate Six. This is considered a prologue to this miniseries. And it's taken all from the point of view from Sharon Carter, who is just reporting back to her superiors at S.H.I.E.L.D. about the incident. This takes place after Spider-Man's initial battle with Doc Ock earlier on in the series, and she was tasked originally to covertly take down Doc Ock, but then of course everything's ruined because Doc Ock held a press conference at the Hammer Industries power plant, and Spider-Man showed up, and that covert and discreetness all went out the window. So after Spider-Man beat Octavius, Carter and the rest of her unit went to go pick up Octavius and explore the Hammer Industries lab. And that's when things get a little dicey, because then they find 3 scientists just who are still there and did not evacuate because they refused to leave their experiment. And the experiment is actually a guy sitting in this cell, and it's the Sandman, Flint Marko himself.
Yeah.
For anyone that knows anything about Spider-Man knows the Sandman.
Yeah. What I find interesting is that in this container, it's not the only character that's going to go through this later on, but his genetics are still unstable, so he has difficulty maintaining a form.
Yeah, definitely. He literally can't hold himself together.
Yeah.
But he's also got a really bad rap sheet that they go over about shooting and killing police officers, and also like going home and beating his girlfriend. And it's a pretty big departure from, I think, the original comics, where he can be a little more sympathetic at times and has gone on several like redemption arcs.
Yeah.
Especially he was an Avenger for a short period of time too.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. But that's how far they've committed to a redemption arc for the Sandman in the original comics, and he's got a good relationship with his mother and stuff like that. In this one, he's a straight up scumbag.
Well, to be fair, it's his first issue. He needs time to go through redemption, you know?
Yeah, it's hard though when he's already a ruthless killer and beats his girlfriend.
Hey man, we all start somewhere. And also, let's not forget that in Spider-Man 3, Sandman just kills a few people in cold blood, and he's still redeemed. So.
I mean, that's because he accidentally killed Uncle Ben in the dumbest retcon ever. Maybe not the dumbest, but one of the dumbest retcons ever.
I don't know, man. It's hard to accidentally kill someone with a gun. Actually, now I think about it's really easy, because it happens all the time, but... America!
Anyways, yeah. Well, speaking of, the Sandman then immediately breaks out of his cell once Sharon Carter goes in and tries to communicate with him. He immediately just attacks them all and just zips out of there in his sand form. And he's outside and he attacks Spider-Man, and there's a big fight that happens. And the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents and police then just like shoot the Sandman in the head. There's a cool scene. He takes his bullet to the head and he literally just bounces back and spits it out, because the guy's made of sand. And there's a really fun part too where there's a full page spread of Spider-Man with like a hose with some firefighters just spraying down the Sandman. For me, I immediately got flashbacks to The Amazing Spider-Man 2, where Spider-Man uses a fire hose on Electro.
Yeah.
And he's wearing the firefighter's hat and he's high-fiving firefighters. This seems like almost direct inspiration for that to me.
They probably are, considering how much Amazing Spider-Man is just directly, aesthetics of different characters is just taken directly from Ultimates, so.
No, exactly. Yeah, so that's super cool to see just the impact that Ultimate has.
Sandman's big thing is always that he has his weakness to water too, though, right?
Yeah, which can be rough because you're like, okay, well, he's a pretty easy villain to beat. You just like throw him in a pool or something.
Okay, but that's easier said than done. Like, you know, like, because sand's heavy, and if it's moving and like pushing around, how are you gonna get water?
Well, it is easier said than done, because then he almost immediately bounces back pretty quickly from getting sprayed down with a fire hose. Maybe they just didn't use enough water or something.
Yeah.
But he comes back and he starts attacking, and he's got Spider-Man on the ropes and he's got him right where he wants him. But then the scientists from the lab kind of hit him with this secret neutralizer weapon, which kind of takes care of everything.
And that makes sense. Like, everyone needs a kill switch.
Yeah, exactly. So,
Yeah.
problem solved.
Oh,
Ho ho ho.
ho, ho.
Wee wee.
Wee wee. Well, look, if you're gonna do illegal genetic tampering on an unstable person and you're gonna give them superpowers, you always give them a kill switch. Oh, it's just the responsible thing to do, you
That's
know?
just proper etiquette. Yeah.
Yeah, like if an insurance company was gonna make a supervillain, they would definitely put a kill switch in. So you should too.
You heard it here first, folks.
Yeah,
Always build in a kill switch to your genetically manipulated super beings.
supervillain. You're making a supervillain on purpose. You can't trust them.
You gotta have safeguards, yeah.
Damn right.
But then Spider-Man's got sand in his shorts, naturally, and he's complaining about it, and he's asking for a ride home because they're on Long Island.
Yeah.
But you can't get a ride home, so he's like, dang, that sucks. Shield, useless. The issue ends after Spider-Man swings away in that flashback with Sharon Carter talking to her superiors in this room about how these illegal genetic experiments, they're not mutants, they're actually far more dangerous. And she goes on this whole monologue about how they need to stop because they keep doing this with people and keep trying to play God, and it keeps getting worse and worse and worse. And it turns into like this horror show, this freak show.
It kind of seems like she's reaching this epiphany. She's going political, or she's like, this is her breaking point. But it's not really, because then we see her pretty stable. I mean, to be fair, people do have those moments where they have this realization, there's an emotional outburst to it. It kind of makes it seem like she's mentally broken now, but she isn't, because we see her do fine in other comics. Like the next comic, basically, we're gonna do. But the other thing that I find interesting is, like, they kind of talk about, like, what's the difference between like a genetic mutation versus a mutant, and really is just legal. At least in my opinion, like, a mutant is someone who was born with the power. So like, she goes, oh, so legally we just assume God gave you those powers legally, which is a thing in law of like God given or God created a disaster. But the other thing is, like, oh, everyone else is like is illegal. It's like, I mean, like, realistically, I feel that's always been the like difficulty Marvel has, is that, like, distinguish between people with powers versus mutants who are who are born with powers, basically.
Yeah, it's not a huge difference, but I think the danger really is that, I mean, there's fears for both of them, I think, in universe reasons for fears, but I think with the people that have been experimented upon illegally and genetically mutated, it's so dangerous because of how intentional it is and how people are messing with powers that they don't fully understand in this way. It's a very Frankenstein's monster kind of idea that Shield and all these other organizations. This is a theme that goes throughout this miniseries: is that there's this genetic arms race going on, and now everyone's trying to one up each other. And we've seen this theme earlier throughout the Ultimate Universe, and how dangerous that can be, and what that creates with creatures like the Green Goblin or Doc Ock or the rest of these supervillains.
It's this interesting thing, because like you said, it's been brought up before, but Shield, I feel in a lot of universes, for like different media, there's this big thing of like, oh, this is going to spark this arms race. And half the time, the guy who says it works for the organization that creates all the problems. And in this case, other than the mutants, Shield kind of creates most of the problems. Or like, if there's a problem, Shield either creates it indirectly or just makes it worse. And like 99% of things, like Green Goblin, that's created by by Osborn trying to create the super soldier serum for her. Shield, and then Shield keeps the research around to replicate it.
Yeah.
Same thing with Doctor Octopus' arms. We're gonna find out in like just the next comic is they could get rid of it, but they want to keep it because they want to like see what it could be used for.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
They still are tempting fate, and they're still pushing and poking and prodding at all this stuff when they should just destroy it and let it go. But they can't, because they're like, we need to examine it for further study and see if we can do something with it. And it's this idea also, like, we got to get to it before our enemies do as well, is the idea. Anyways, we then continue into Ultimate Six proper.
Ultimate Sex.
Ultimate Sex, yeah, as you titled it, Josh.
Okay, so it was an accident the first time, but then you kept on going with it.
I saw the script for this episode that you sent me, Josh, and it just said Ultimate Sex. And I thought it
It
was
does not.
intentional, honestly, knowing you.
It was not, but it was too funny to get rid of. But I'm gonna be perfectly honest.
Yeah, and then so I'm like seeing Ultimate Sex number 1, Ultimate Sex number 2, Ultimate Sex number 3.
No, 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 no. You made Ultimate Sex number 2 and 3. I only made the title Ultimate Sex and the first one Ultimate Sex 1.
I mean, fair enough. I had to run with a bit.
Yes, Ultimate Sinister Sex actually.
This is the most sinister sex of all.
All sex is sinister.
Anyways, you Puritan. This first issue is illustrated by Joe Quesada, who at the time was editor-in-chief at Marvel, and he's also a really good artist, I gotta say. His style might not be for everyone, but I was excited to see that he illustrated this first comic. The issue begins with Electro waking up in a hospital, an FBI hospital actually, after the second arc of Ultimate Spider-Man way back. And he's surrounded by these FBI agents.
They're like, hey, your boss, Fist, is a kingpin. We're taking everything in. You're probably in trouble too. So he freaks out and just shocks up the whole room and escapes.
Yeah, and he flees, he fries everyone, jumps out the window, and he's flying around buck-ass naked. And he's blue. His entire body is blue.
Like those Avatar people from that movie.
Yeah, the one with all the blue people.
Yeah, those tree hugging hippies.
He's exactly like that, except not a hippie. But he then shorts out and falls on top of a cab and is immediately confronted by the Ultimates.
I don't even know if, based on the timeline of Marvel, if the Ultimates were a thing yet, but they seem to be one.
I think they were at this point because the first miniseries had recently concluded.
He's also ranting. It's like, I can't believe I got beat by the punk kid Spider-Man.
Yeah, that's right. He's so
Yeah.
embarrassed by it. And we'll see this a lot throughout this miniseries. A lot of these villains are like, I can't believe I got beaten by a punk kid.
Yeah. I'll be perfectly honest. Like, I actually wondered, like, hey, like, they do well against, like, the Avengers, like, but they still have difficulty with Spider-Man.
He's a tough nut to crack. I mean, he's super strong, fast, agile. He's also very smart. He's very quick-witted.
Yeah.
I think he gets on people's nerves a lot.
I think he's also just underestimated a lot, right? At this point.
He is underestimated a lot, is the thing, because he's smaller, because he's a kid, because he's a chatterbox and mouths off a lot and seems just like this goofy, ridiculous, like, silly guy.
Yeah. We then flash in on a supervillain therapy circle, interestingly enough.
Yes, yeah. It starts off with Doc Ock going on about how he misses his arms and about how he's failing to take responsibility for all of his personal failures. And it's mentioned that he's even been divorced and he's blamed people like Norman Osborn or Justin Hammer or whatever. Yeah. So he seems pretty remorseful and he seems like he wants to do better, at least in this speech.
He's introspective, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think, to be fair, Sopranos was coming out the same. I think with certain criminals, you have to be careful with, like, well, if they're being introspective, are they being introspective so they could do crime better? Or are they being introspective because they genuinely want to change?
That's a good question, yeah. That's important for this.
And for Dr. Octopus, I think we know he's
just trying to do we know the answer. Like he's like, how can I do crime better? How can I be a better criminal?
I feel Dr. Octopus realistically is not, in a world with super tanks and superheroes, is not dangerous by himself. Like, if an idiot was given his powers or suits, he's not a threat. Like, what's always been scary about Dr. Octopus is how intelligent he is. Like, he is this great chess player, he's this inventor. Like, that is the big threat of Dr. Octopus, realistically.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
He is a super genius, and that is his real threat, not like his arms, which, if they were in the hands of anyone dumber, they would just be goofy. They'd be strong, but it's like Stiltman, you know? Who takes Stiltman seriously?
Punisher.
Yeah, that's why he murdered him.
Yeah, but my thing with Dr. Octopus is he's goofy, but recently in Ultimates you go, oh, he is goofy because he and Norman Osborn are just these goofballs that do stupid stuff. But now they're becoming lucid, and they went from like crazed, dangerous criminal like a meth head just beating up cars to like, okay, now they might actually be able to break into homes and steal stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Which is honestly kind of more terrifying.
Yeah, absolutely. And we continue on throughout this support group as well, with Electro going like, yo, I got nothing on me. I got rights. Where's my phone call? I got a girl and my mom at home. I gotta give him a call. I'm being held here against my will. And Sandman's like, you guys are all whiners. I'm a real man. And it doesn't matter to me. I'm gonna take it like a man. I did the crime. I'll do the time.
I respect that.
Yeah, he's standing his ground.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, Norman Osborn's like, I don't care. I just want to see my boy.
We all assume it's Harry.
We assume it's Harry, yeah,
Yeah.
at first, but we'll see.
Oh, this is also you and I debated this before, but I think this is the first mention in comics of an Osborn Octavius rivalry, because it then carries on to the Spectacular Spider-Man TV show, the Ultimate Spider-Man TV show, and the Spider-Man games later.
Yeah, I don't know about any Octavius Osborn rivalry, at least before they became supervillains in the comics, like the original comics. I know
Yeah,
they've definitely been rivals as supervillains in the main comics, but I don't know about but I don't know beforehand just as scientists and industrialists.
yeah. Though I think in most cartoons it's a one-sided rivalry because Osborn's the boss, he bullies Octavius, and Octavius just goes, "But I'm greater than him. I'm the better scientist. I'm the better man." And once
Yeah.
I have the opportunity, I'll be his true rival.
Yeah, he's definitely more like, you'll see, you'll all see.
Yeah, it's like Walter White actually.
Yeah, a little bit, honestly.
The therapist is Hank Pym, which I don't know if they actually make fun of. He is actually not qualified at all to be a therapist of any kind. But
Yeah, they do. They do poke fun at that. But I think it is funny because this series is written by Brian Michael Bendis, who usually writes Ultimate Spider-Man, and Mark Miller was the one who wrote the Ultimates, so it's interesting to see Bendis do a softer, tamer take on these characters in the Ultimates, especially Hank Pym, because Hank Pym is making a genuine effort, it seems, to try and rehabilitate these villains and to run this like support group to help them come to terms mentally with who they are and what they've done. It reminds me of the Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes cartoon, because that Hank Pym was all about rehabilitation and helping people, even if they are villains, rather than resorting to violence all the time.
it's weird because the way Millar writes him and Bendis writes him is they're so diametrically opposed. But also this also fits in with the way Millar wrote him, where he goes well, once he's medicated and he's seeing a therapist, he does calm down, become more regular. If it's once he's
Mm-hmm.
able to be more in charge of his emotions, I find it interesting because Norman asks also "Hey, what are these things on our collars?" And he goes "Oh, this is Richard gear that we used on a Hulk." And I was like, "Is that a Fantastic Four reference?"
Yeah, I think it might be, honestly.
Yeah. But Norman also asks a good question. He goes "Hey, Doctor Octopus doesn't have powers, and you don't have his arms are removed. So why does he have a collar? Are you guys noticed that we have genetic mutations and that something's changing in us? That you still have to keep the collars on us? It's a really sneaky way of trying to get more answers, I think, which shows just
Yeah,
how sneaky Norman is.
he is a very sneaky, insidious, cunning, clever guy.
He's a mean little elf,
Yeah, he's an angry little elf, that's for sure.
or he's an angry big elf.
Yeah, definitely. And then, speaking of answers, then Nick Fury shows up in some hilarious red, white, and blue American themed basketball gear,
Yeah.
just showing up, getting ready to go out to the court, just swings by and is like, hey, what's up? He gives them the rundown. He's like, listen, you've all given up your rights just by illegally mutating yourselves. So you belong to S.H.I.E.L.D. and we get to do whatever we want. You have no rights, and we're just trying to rehabilitate you the best we can so that you can serve our country and be put to good use.
It's interesting because it's this implication that by doing this they're no longer humans.
Yeah, that is the idea, that
Yeah.
they aren't human beings and they give up their human rights, essentially, which is
And
pretty messed up. I think this whole thing, Nick Fury is a pretty shady character in Ultimate for sure. I mean, he's shady generally in most versions, but in Ultimate, in this comic especially, he's doing all this stuff, and it's later revealed that the president doesn't even know what's been going on here,
yeah.
and
But
in his mind it is all for the greater good and to protect and serve the United States and his country. But yeah, even for supervillains, this is pretty messed up.
this is also interesting because I think that was the political discussion at the time. It was hey, if you're an American citizen, can we just detain you without rights? Because by doing these terrorist things, did you give up your American citizenship? Was a topic at the time. It's a topic
Yeah,
again now, but
unfortunately, yeah, and it shouldn't be, but
yeah.
here we are.
It's interesting. When we started this podcast, some of the stuff has not aged well, and then it turned back around because the topics were just brought up again randomly. So it went from aged badly to suddenly like, no, no, it's like very topical again. It's really weird that it happened.
Yeah, it is. It's weird how it's kind of come full circle, unfortunately, and even become worse.
Yeah.
But then we cut to on TV, Craven is back, Craven the Hunter, and he's trying to restore his public image after a humiliating one punch defeat by Spider Man. And he's on this talk show and he's talking about how he was going through some stuff at the time and he's better now, but he's going back to hunt Spider Man because he's a criminal and a menace. And there's
Is
an
a
implication that Craven mutated himself as well.
but he denies it.
Yeah, he sidesteps it, definitely.
Mhm.
And then he leaves the interview and his agent's talking him up. He's like, Cravey, baby, that was amazing. And he's like, I hate this publicity. I don't want to do this. And the guy's trying to get him to fight a fake Spider-Man so he can get better publicity, but he wants the real one.
Yep.
And then the Ultimates show up again to arrest Craven.
He tries to run, and Captain America goes, "All right, Thor, take him down." I'm like, you can't just use Thor to take down this celebrity. And then Thor goes, "No." So Hawkeye just shoots him.
Yeah, Craven's so pathetic in this series because he runs like such a coward from the Ultimates as soon as he sees them. And then there's that page of just seeing him running while the arrow gets closer and closer and then hits him and knocks him down.
Like, well, the thing is that like he knows it's not a match for the Ultimates, but also he's not even a match for Spider-Man, even at his best.
No, yeah, he's pretty pathetic and weak in this version. It's a shame.
Yeah,
Like, it's funny, but it's also like, dang, they really did Craven dirty.
yeah. I think he's the rest of the Sinister Six makes fun of him, which is a shame because
Yeah,
I think in regular comics he's supposed to be like a big deal at the street level.
yeah, he is. He's more of a threat in the main comics for sure.
Yeah, this guy thrashes Punisher when they meet each other.
Yeah, I mean, it's the Punisher too, so he could take him.
Yeah.
Wasp zaps the camera that's recording this whole thing. There's a really funny line where the Ultimates are like, "Oh, is that Freddie Prinze Junior? Let's get out of here." Which I think
Wait,
is a really funny. It almost feels like a reference to the first Ultimates when Freddie Prinze Junior was there and the Hulk tried to kill him.
on a date with Betty, no?
Yeah, exactly. When he went on a date with Betty and the
I,
Hulk tried to like kill them both.
I actually do not know what's like Bendis and Millar's obsession with Freddie Prinze Jr.
I guess he was just big at the time. He was pretty topical. I don't know what the big deal was.
I know we talked about it on air, but what is his famous role? I remember he was Freddy in Scooby Doo live action, and that's kind of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's had a couple other things like I Know You What You Did Last Summer and things like that, but
Oh, isn't that new?
no, you're probably thinking of this is like another reboot slash revival of I Know What You Did Last Summer. He was in
Oh,
the original.
ah,
Yeah, and he also did it was She's All That too. He was in that, a big
oh,
early 2000s rom-com.
I know she's all that. That's by Spike Lee.
I don't think so.
Oh,
Anyways, Craven is taken in and he tries to like use his mutation after he's arrested, but
it's a
then
nasty mutation,
yeah, where he turns into this like hideous beast, this like wild animal basically.
and he immediately gets zapped back into human form.
Yeah, because the
Oh,
collars prevent them from using their mutations and shock them if they do.
yeah. Also, by the way, to the readers and the listeners, he is in prison at this point. He's trying to beast out to escape prison.
Yeah,
But like,
exactly.
yeah. Um, and so the villains are kind of, hey, there's five of us. What's with the last cell? And he goes like, oh, there's gonna be a sixth villain or sixth
Yeah,
guy.
Norman's like, there will be six of us. There will be
Yeah.
a six. And that's
Hmm.
like the ominous ending to the first issue.
Yeah.
And so then we get back to the group therapy sessions at the beginning of the second issue where Norman's still not talking and this frustrates Hank to no end. And Norman says, oh, well, you guys just want the Oz. And I think Hank really pisses off Norman because he's like, well, we already took the Oz from you
Yeah.
and we
You,
have it.
you guys are criminals. We confiscated everything.
Yeah, which enrages Norman because this was his life's work, and he uses his powers to almost go full goblin
Yeah, and
and attacks Hank.
yeah, guards are trying to subdue him. The collars aren't working, so Hank just turns giant and just squishes him to calm him down.
Yeah, once again, Hank turns giant and is fully naked. We should have a counter for every time that Hank turns giant and has no clothes.
Yeah, I mean it's Hank and Hulk at this point because Hulk doesn't have stretchy pants here. He just turns naked most of the
That's
time.
true,
Yeah,
yeah. But it's
which
much more noticeable when he's a full grown man, giant man, literally, with
yeah,
no clothes. You can see it more.
I do love how they bring out how overpowered Giant Man theoretically should be. Because later he
Yeah,
takes out the Blob in one hit. He takes out, I think in the Earth's Mightiest Heroes version, he just kicks the Abomination out of the way.
that's true. Yeah, I remember that. That was
Yeah,
really cool.
yeah. In jail, there's a weird scene where Electro goes like, "Well, can't you show us boobs?" And Sharon almost flashes him and then doesn't, and he calls her a skank. Says, "You'll be the first."
Yeah, she
It's
really
just
got on his bad side by trolling him like that.
yeah, like it's not a bad scene, but it's also like I kind of expected this. It's like I think like Mark Millar would have written something like this. Bendis is a little bit odder. It's just
I
how
don't know. I think it's pretty funny. It's
it is. I
like,
like it, but it's just a. I don't know. It felt more like a Millar thing than a Bendis thing.
yeah, it is. Yeah, like pretending to almost flash someone and then being like, psych.
Yeah, she literally says
That,
"psych." I think.
yeah, that's definitely more something Mark Millar would do.
Yeah,
But
Electro is also just a massive horn dog in
yeah,
this.
he is, definitely.
Yeah,
Otto Octavius says he wants to talk to Hank, and he gives her this whole moving speech about how he wants to contribute to science or his life is for nothing and all this stuff, and he wants to help them. And Hank's like, yeah, we'll get back to you on that one.
yeah. Fury and Pym talk to the Ultimates what they think about Octavius, and then Wasp goes like, "Oh, I love Octavius. I did one of my doctorates on Octavius's work," which is like such a comic-y thing of like characters just having multiple doctorates.
Yeah, no, totally. And also the idea that you do your PhD on someone else's work who is another major character in the universe.
The
That's
Peter
such a
Parker
Peter
syndrome.
Parker thing to do. Yeah.
Yeah. I think later there's revealed like Peter Parker's dad has a connection to Octavius. So that I mean,
I'm sure he does because
yeah,
he was also at Oscorp.
yeah. And then someone makes a joke like, "Hey, Janet, what's with your thing with like bad boys? Because you like Hank, you like Captain America, you did a dissertation on Octavius as a supervillain."
Yeah.
Well, I'll be fair to Octavius. I think the whole thing with Octavius is that no one knows that he's a supervillain. No one knows he has a dark side to him until he becomes a supervillain.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
But speaking of dark sides too, it's also treated pretty lightly here about the fact that Hank is back around Janet even after all like the violent physical abuse in the Ultimates. They're like, yeah, like we hope you guys can be civil is basically what they say. I'm like, he beat the shit out of her. What do you mean?
It's I think this is Ben just trying to rewrite Hank to a certain degree, away from like how exaggeratedly evil he was in the last run.
Yeah, it is definitely a little more toned down in terms of how aggressively bad some of the characters are as people and to each other. So
And
I
like
can see that.
I think there's this implication that with all the drugs and medication and perhaps even therapy Hank is getting, he is more of a like he's more passive, um, kind of like not sure if castrator is the right word, but like his demeanor, kind of like Hank in Earth's Mightiest Hero. Like I don't think Earth's
Yeah.
Mightiest Hero is based on Ultimate Hank as much as he is based on Ultimate Hank when written by Bendis, I guess.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. I can see that.
Yeah,
During the meeting, Captain America asks Fury if any of these Sinister Six guys, if they were a result of trying to replicate the super soldier serum, and Fury says yes. And so Cap just like quietly walks away. It's a very tense moment. Of course, Tony Stark walks in and he's like, "Hey guys, what I miss?" And Cap's just on his way out.
Tony Stark also is in his underwear because he does have that suit where like you have to switch out and be encased in this liquid, which I find
Yeah,
funny.
exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's very tense because, and this comes up later on, but this is a big point of the whole thing is that now Steve knows that people have been trying to replicate the super soldier serum. So it's very personal for him and he takes it very hard.
Yeah.
And then Otto is finally taken into Hank's lab, and Hank Pym and his fellow scientists are like, oh, yeah, we think your metal arms can have such practical applications for working safe equipment for research and also prosthetics and all this stuff. And I'm like, the first thing you did was give this guy access to his arms again? How
Well,
stupid are you?
I also like that because I think the original comics they were like lab equipment, weren't they? The arms.
Yeah, exactly. That's what
Yeah.
their intended purpose was.
Yeah. Or I guess like the skit is like, oh, my arms, my mobility arms.
But I'm like, guys, like you're gonna put him in the same room as those arms that he has mental control over? That's the first thing you do when you try to give him some trust?
Well, that's the thing with Shield and like real life organizations or whatever organization is that like they make the problem worse. They're like, you could have destroyed the arms, but you're like, oh, like it could be turned into weapons, or like the other side might turn it into weapons, so we might as well turn it into weapons. It's an arms race.
Um, arms race. Huh.
Ah,
Got him.
well,
Good
and
one,
I
Josh.
that wasn't even on purpose, but I think Doctor Octavius then like goes on a weird rant. He goes like, well, it's not just like the arms refused to me, because when you're removed, I would have lost connection to him, and he has this weird idea that he's psychically connected to the arms, or that perhaps he was a mutant with a low level psychic ability, and the accident just amplified the ability, which is a very interesting way of saying it. And also, he kills everyone in the room without even putting on his arms. Like the arms just kill people
Yeah.
while he's on his rant.
Yeah. It's like next thing you know, it cuts to this double page spread where he has impaled everyone on his arms that he's mentally controlled.
Yeah, but that means he is right. He does have a connection to the arms, and like it reminds me of how in the movie, I think they even do this in 616. Is that like eventually is that like the arms talk to him, and he does have this weird connection to them.
Yeah, he does. That's how he escapes prison in the first appearance of the Sinister Six back in the original comics in the Amazing Spider-Man annual. He like mentally calls his arms to him.
Yeah. Um.
So yeah, this is a big thing for him for sure. There's
I
this like deep underlying connection with him and these arms.
I also remember there's a comic where it's I think it's 616 where it's revealed that Doctor Octopus is mostly at a certain point not conscious anymore, and the arms are just doing all the work because Spider-Man has just beaten the crap out of him so many times.
Yeah. No, definitely. There are moments like that where the arms just take full control.
Also means that Spider-Man has just beat the crap out of this old guy multiple times.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely comics that go into the head trauma and actual damage that he does to this regular guy who just happens to have these metal arms.
Yeah.
But then, with Octavius free, he manages to shut down the power grid, and the
Yep.
bad guys, their collars turn off so they can get their powers back, and they all flee.
Uh, but before they flee, Craven and Electro are talking about like as a celebrity which famous woman he slept with, and Electro's just listening, and Craven goes like, "Oh, it's a Jennifer," and we don't get the last name.
Yeah. We never know which Jennifer it is, which is a really fun, cheeky way of like getting our attention. We're like, there's so many famous Jennifers, it could have been any of them.
In the 2000s, I could think of Jennifer Garner, Jennifer Lopez, Jennifer Aniston, and that's kind of it.
Yeah, I'm sure there's more that we're not thinking. Jennifer Love Hewitt.
Oh yeah, huh?
Yeah, there's probably a few more too. There's a lot of them, so it's a fun little tease that we'll never know who Craven hooked up with in the 2000s. And then Norman and Otto as well make peace with each other, and they're like, water under the bridge, let's work together. And Norman offers everyone else, he's like, hey, you guys can do what you want, or you can join me and we'll take down Fury. And then he's like, and we're going to get my boy back. His name is Peter. It's not Harry. We all thought it was Harry, but it was Peter. How
Yeah,
messed up is that? He thought Peter Parker is his boy in his mind, not his own son, Harry.
because Norman Osborn's evil, and I'm glad, even at his lucid moments, I'm glad they point out he's kind of a shady dude.
Yeah, he's a nasty guy, even when he is lucid.
Yeah,
Especially when he's lucid, honestly.
yeah. Next issue opens up with Fury going like, "Yeah, 37 agents are dead." So he calls in the Ultimates. They're all busy. Well, actually, they're not all busy. Mostly just Iron Man's busy horn dogging it up.
Yeah, Iron Man's hooking up with a woman. Wasp is just reading. Captain America's watching TV. Black Widow's like just taking a shower.
Yeah, yeah, because Marvel, you gotta sexualize Black Widow.
Yeah, they're like, yeah, show a naked woman in the shower. That'll get their attention.
Yeah, I mean, like, I feel Black Widow of all the female heroes has like they already show her having the most cleavage, so only a matter of time before they put
Yeah,
it all in.
they couldn't have
Yeah,
shown us Thor in the shower.
hell yeah, they should have. No, he doesn't need a shower. He's in the rain. Look, it's the reason when you're like walking outside in the rain, you don't need to take a shower that day.
You still need to take a shower, Josh.
No, you don't. You're covered in water.
That's that's not how that works. You
Well,
need soap.
okay, take some soap out with you, and while you're walking, just soap up your hair, and boom,
You don't soap your hair. You use shampoo and conditioner.
tomato potato. The point is, you use conditioner?
You don't?
No, I don't use conditioner. The only time
Oh my
I've used
gosh.
conditioner was when I was in a relationship, and I used my ex's conditioner, and she forced it on me. There's no other reason to use conditioner.
You gotta keep the moisture in your hair.
Why? I wear a hat.
Oh, you know what? You're a lost cause. I don't even think you take showers if it's raining that day then.
It's California, it never rains.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
Well, that's a silver lining of being in a drought.
Yeah. The Avengers go see the center. Everyone's basically dead. They find Hank, who's still injured, but Janet immediately freaks out and, like, flies to him.
Yeah, as soon as she hears that Hank's in bad shape, she flies out towards him. It's realistic, I think, when it comes to abusive relationships. There's still love there, no matter how messed up it may be, no matter how much this person has hurt you. She's still gonna like fly out to him.
Yeah. And I also think it is, to a certain degree, that, but also Bendis trying to rebuild traditional Hank. Because I feel that's what I'm trying to do a lot, is trying to get some of the edgier Ultimate characters and just trying to move them back in line with traditional Marvel.
Yeah, and I see what he's trying to do, but also I don't think it works at this point because they've gone too far with Ultimate Hank to try and salvage that relationship with the two of them.
I think the most you could do is just say, like, he is very mentally unstable, which
Yeah,
he's depicted as being, like, he's literally on pills, so
yeah, exactly.
yeah,
So just leave it at that and then leave them apart.
yeah.
But they get there, and yeah, there's only 3 people alive. There were 38 people before, so 35 agents are dead. The villains are gone, and Fury's like, we can only track them if they power up. Otherwise, we'd be able to track pretty much anyone.
Yeah,
But
those crappy Reed Richards colors,
yeah, they can only track you if you're using your powers. If this was Doom Tech, I'm sure they would be able to track them no matter what.
Damn right. Doomtech will, like, track you down if you're dead, if you're in another dimension.
Yeah, he's always one up in Richards.
Yeah. Well, like, I do find this one interesting because they actually explain what the power colors are. They modify your genetics to be more stable, because I think with these illegal genetics experiments is the fact they do make the genetic structure, whatever that means, unstable, and all this does is shock you, but also stabilizes your genetics back to, like, a regular human form. But also, if that's real, why don't you use that to fix cancer? Or
Yeah.
I'm thinking about this now. If that's real, you could actually use it on, like, there's a lot, like, could you use it on Addison's disease?
You could, yeah, easily.
Yeah. Oh wow, that's actually kind of messed up that they have this technology to cure diseases.
I don't want to cure cancer. I want to turn people into dinosaurs.
That is such a great line.
Yeah, it comes in handy so often. It's a good catch-all.
I think it's because a lot of comic writers have these good ideas about villains and super tech, but then if you actually think about the real world implications, you go, like, you could just use it to cure diseases.
You could use that for so many more practical and helpful purposes, yeah.
You know who does use it for healthy and practical purposes? Doctor Doom.
Yeah, oh yeah, that's why his country is the leading country in pretty much everything.
Yeah. But there are images of him, like, going, like, once I beat Richards, I'll use this to end world poverty after I beat Richards, because, he has his priorities straight.
Which is funny, because then he's never going to beat him, so he'll never actually get to that. Fury's talking to the Ultimates. He's like, all right, we got to focus on any known associates, or especially any known enemies for the Sinister Six. And then he's like, oh, Parker.
He is just Parker. And him,
Yeah.
actually.
I'm like, oh shit. So then we get to Spider-Man finally, and Peter's in class, and he and the rest of his classmates are in trouble because they used rap lyrics for a class assignment where they had to write a poem.
And except MJ and Gwen, because Gwen has the heart of a warrior and a poet.
So does MJ.
I don't know about MJ, but I know Gwen definitely has that artistic side. You could definitely see her at like a poetry slam.
I mean, MJ literally does theater. What more do you want? She's
When
an
did she
actor.
do theater?
Like all the time.
I don't remember this.
Every version of MJ is like an actress.
Even in this one.
Yeah, I think they'll probably hint at that later, but yeah.
Okay, being an actor is not the same as being a poet or a writer.
I mean, you're still an artist. I think it falls under that same umbrella of being artsy.
Okay, you're an artist, but Gwen has the heart of a poet.
Anyways, it's just fun that the two of them are the only ones who pass.
Yeah. I also feel this is like a decline of Peter. Like, oh, also his art style changed. Like, he doesn't have the hairstyle that we all know and love in the Ultimate Universe. He kind of has like short, punky, spiky black hair for this one.
Yeah, because it's not Mark Bagley on art. What we know is like the ultimate Spider-Man, ultimate Peter Parker haircut.
Yeah, and I also feel like it's a decline of his academic. It's a little out of character, but also I think it could be representative of like how he is declining academically.
Yeah, because he's busy being Spider-Man, and that keeps him preoccupied.
Yeah.
But then he's taken by Agent Clay Quartermain, an actual character from the original Marvel universe as well, and taken out of class, and they take him to the Triskelion. And I think this whole thing about Peter being like called in by Nick Fury and Shield and taken in, it definitely feels to me a lot like MCU Spider-Man. They get a lot of inspiration from Ultimate Spider-Man. It feels a lot like Far From Home, where the guy's like, oh, do you have your suit with you? Come on, we got to get into action. And Nick Fury is like hounding him constantly to get into the game. I mean, this isn't exactly that because they're mainly just trying to protect him. But yeah, he's being called out of his normal high school life to be part of this bigger picture, game changing world event, honestly. And it's really funny because then the Ultimates meet Peter, and Tony's like, did you go back in time to get him? Because of how young he is. It's a lot like how they talk about Spider-Man in the MCU because he is a teenager there as well.
Yeah. And Fury like kind of defends himself. I was like, well, like this guy beat up all the Sinister Six before. I mean, they're not called the Sinister Six yet, but
yeah, but he's like, he beat all these guys that were going after. Maybe let's show the kid a little respect because he did some impressive work. Like he's beaten all of them on his own.
Yeah. I also love how they go like, and I'm getting agents to protect Aunt May and MJ, and she goes like, we found her at a wine class, and I'm like, that's such a. I'm not know. I know that's like a joke about Brooklyn. Like also like, what's a wine class like? You just drink wine. What do you have to learn about wine? Are you growing grapes in Long Island?
Me, I've been saying this for years, but it's all these people who do wine tastings and talk about the history of the wine and what you taste in the notes of the wine, and it's just, I hate it.
No,
disgusting.
Also, I found I remember Long Island does grow grapes and wine. That being said, I don't think you need to take a class on wine. Here's my class on wine. Go to a bar and drink some. That's your class on wine.
Yeah, boom. You tell him. Damn I'm right there with you, Josh. Or, for the first time.
Or, get your box wine, spill some on the floor, and lap it up like a dog, like a regular person.
Okay, well, like you might have lost me there.
And then you might get some little carpet in your mouth, and you're going to regret your choices, and you don't drink wine again for 3 years.
Wow, you're really cooking with gas there, man.
Yeah. You don't need a wine class. You don't need a brandy class. You don't need a gin and tonic class. Also, gin and tonics are like, that's not an alcoholic drink. That's just like industrial acid. Like, why would you even drink that?
I like gin and tonics.
Oh, why? They taste disgusting.
They're not that bad.
Look, the only 3 drinks you need is whiskey, Guinness, cider, and ale. And maybe a seltzer. So that's 5 drinks.
Yeah.
You don't need anything else. Anything else tastes disgusting. Its whole point is to get you drunk. It's all about the taste and the slow burn.
Yeah, you tell them.
Damn right.
And every time I think that you've gone on your craziest rant, you then manage to outdo yourself. Well, anyways, Don't drink wine with Josh. And getting back to the story, yeah, Peter is pretty worried about MJ too, and he's desperately like, I gotta talk to her. She got thrown off the Queensboro Bridge by Osborn the last time he was involved, and Fury loses it and snaps at Peter, and he's like, I just lost 35 agents, 35 families are mourning. I'm still bending over backwards for you. So he kind of shuts him down and is like, hey, kid, get it together. We've got serious work to do. I can't be bothered by you and your concern for your girlfriend.
Fury's kind of a dick, especially when you consider this is all his fault.
Yeah, this is his fault,
This
for
is like
sure.
95% his fault. You're the one who kept all these weapons. You're the one who put them in these weird situations.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We're at the White House, weirdly enough, where the chief of staff of the White House gets a call from Norman Osborn and goes, yeah, Mr. President, you might want to take this call.
Yeah, so you can tell now the six are their sights are aiming way higher than just their usual, oh, we're gonna attack a high school or a power plant even or a factory. Like, no, we're going straight for the White House.
They're not like the classic supervillain where like, I'm gonna poison the water. No, they're just going straight for like the White
They're
House.
like, insurrection time, baby.
To be fair, they were like, not to be fair to them, but they are terrorists. What's a terrorist
Yeah.
gonna do?
Yeah, I mean, what else can they do?
Yeah,
They gotta set their sights as high as possible, so they're going straight for the White House. In the meantime, the fourth issue opens with them hiding out in the Kingpin's summer hideaway.
yeah, where they're feasting on a supply of junk food and ding dongs.
Yeah, exactly. And I think at this point they're saying that Fisk is hiding out in Argentina.
Yeah.
This might have been taken place before the like most recent arc of Ultimate Spider-Man that we read then, because at that point he's come out of hiding.
What was the last one we reviewed with Spider-Man? Was it when him taking down Kingpin with Black Cat?
Yeah, with Black Cat and Electro was there.
Yeah, so like, and if we go back to Spider-Man, if this happens immediately after Spider-Man 46, then like, yeah, this is right before he comes back.
Yeah, so this is right before he comes back, but yeah, he's hiding out in Argentina, so they're free to use his base.
And also, what's he
And
gonna do? Kingpin and his men can't take down Sinister Six.
no, they don't have the firepower for that. Were the
The military
Enforcers going to
does.
take down the Sinister Six?
The military doesn't have the firepower to take out the Sinister Six.
No. The Ultimates are the only ones even who can do that.
Yeah, and like, when the Ultimates fight the Sinister Six have already gone through the police, the Secret Service, the FBI, and a couple Shield Triskeletons, or like whatever
Yeah,
those are called, the carriers.
Triskelion.
Yeah, and those carriers. The Sinister Six are like they could go through Kingpin.
Yeah, easily. They would
Yeah,
roll over him.
yeah. It's still Bush, which is funny because the chief of staff they zoom in on his face, and he is this bearded guy. And I looked up who the chief of staff was in the Bush years. None of them have a beard or a mustache, so they made up a fictional chief of staff, which is funny because they already keep using Bush and Cheney over and over, but it's still
Mm-hmm.
Bush. Yeah,
Yeah, no, it's still Bush and some random chief of staff, but
yeah.
yeah, there's a whole scene where Bush is reading Fury the Riot Act for this about how he didn't tell him about this secret prison and he detained people secretly, illegally against their will.
Which is ironic because Bush did that in real life, but
Yeah, they're kind of just shoving any responsibility away from Bush in this universe.
and he reveals that we were able to call the chief of staff because he and the chief went to the same college, just like we did.
Yeah, that's pretty funny. But Norman has a big list of demands. He's like, I want $100 million. I want my company back. I want my research back, and I want my boy
Yeah.
or the Sinister Six. The big threat is that the Sinister Six are going to release all the info about Fury and his illegal detaining of them and like, the inhumane treatment they went through in this secret prison. And they're going to pick it up because they have footage from Craven's reality show. Their camera crew apparently is following them around.
Which is not true. I think they're making the last part up. Because we find out they are lying. Norman does lie.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
actually a bluff. They don't have the camera crew with them. They don't have any hard evidence or footage
Mhm.
of where they were held or what was done to them.
Yeah. Norman, like I said earlier, says like we're white collar terrorists. He goes like people like us don't go to jail, which I feel is very much like rich people when they go like rich people don't go to jail. We're war
Mm-hmm.
buddies, and it's really funny because they're all dressed up as soldiers, Probably because they just stole a bunch of Shield uniforms.
Yeah, probably, yeah. They are dressed up like they are a militia or
Yeah,
some kind of rebellion.
yeah, with like the boots, the pants, the vest, the belts.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
And yeah, he does go on about how they're going to make history and they're going to be taught about in classrooms and they're going to make movies about them and they're white collar terrorists, quote unquote. And they're going to get a payoff for this by the government because the government doesn't want the knowledge to be released publicly that they were held and experimented on and created by SHIELD and the US government. So it's very, yeah, it is a rich people attitude of, well, we are such white collar criminals and we're such a high status and a high level and we're so connected to the government that
Mm-hmm.
they can't do anything to us.
And, they're not wrong because since this comic has come out, people did try to overthrow the government, and they've made movies about it. They're bad guys in the movies, but they're still movies.
Yeah, and a lot of the people did end up going free, unfortunately.
Not just going free, some of them ended up back in government.
Yeah, scarily enough.
Yeah, this is also like a time when we found that the U.S. government was up to a lot of shady stuff with experiments. So I
Mm.
don't know. I feel the U.S. government could take a couple PR hits and be fine. But honestly, the 100 million is also not, like a kind of tiny amount that like I
Yeah,
feel.
I mean, the US government is trillions of dollars in debt already. What's another 100 million?
Yeah. Well, back then we were only billions of dollars in debt.
Oh, excuse me. Yeah.
Like no, but that being said,
Still,
I'm like a bunch of supervillains are loose and all they want is $100 million. I'm like, maybe this is a sign I should never be president. But if I was Bush, I go, that's a good deal. It's like one Rhode Island for like peace.
yeah, you'd also be giving this psychopath his whole company back.
Oh, lie. Oh, I won't gonna give him his company back. I'll just lie about that one.
Yeah. I think he'd figure it out.
Okay, by the time he figures out, I would have gotten the Avengers ready. I would have gotten tanks, aircraft carriers, bombers,
Well,
just in case.
that's on the way
Yeah. uh,
because they do send the Ultimates to Craven's like TV studio because they were under the impression, and Norman said that they had Craven's like camera crew and everything like on them. So they're like, all right, we're going to the studio, but that did turn out to be a bluff and a distraction. And they go there, and the villains are not there.
yeah, and they found that the company's almost bankrupt.
Yeah, exactly. So it was a total bluff.
Spider-Man is a menace. He's taking away people's jobs.
Yeah. One punch and he took away so many jobs, ruined a whole company.
Yeah. Um. Yeah. So the Peter and Aunt May are at the Triskelion, or whatever.
Yeah, well, Aunt May's at home at this point, but Peter's at the Triskelion in his Spider-Man outfit, just being like, what am I doing? I should be out there. Why am I just sitting tight here? He's
Mm-hmm.
anxious to be part of the action because, of course, these are his villains and they're threatening his family. But there's a really sweet moment where he calls Aunt May and they have this like really nice exchange, just checking in. And I like that. Tiny moments to check in and remind us what's important. Why Aunt May is so important is because obviously it's basically his mom and he's checking
Mm-hmm.
in on his mom, just making sure everything's good, and she's checking everything's good with him.
Yeah.
And it's even more devastating then that the next thing that happens is that the villains hack into the Triskelion and do a full-scale invasion because Norman is going after Peter was the whole
Yeah.
objective, and he's like, hello my boy,
And
like,
we'll go more into this in the next issue, but I do like this how connected it is. But as the Shield agents go, like, is it Magneto? Is it Hulk? Or one of them escaping? And it just shows that like there's other criminals, there's other people in this prison, and just how small this universe, and connected this universe is.
yeah, especially at this point, like, yeah, Hulk and Magneto are the two big villains in prison there. And
Yeah.
luckily, they don't forget about that. That's a pretty big point of continuity. So I'm happy they include that. The next issue, issue 5, starts with Black Widow and some SHIELD agents arriving to take Aunt May into protective custody. And Aunt May wants to know where Peter is, rightfully so. I mean, she's
Mhm.
like, where's my kid, basically?
Yeah.
And it cuts to the Triskelion that's just in shambles. It's like destroyed completely. We address what happened with Banner and Magneto.
Yeah.
Banner apparently just fell asleep reading a magazine, so that wasn't even an issue.
Magneto, they did accidentally almost kill because they pumped all the oxygen air out of his cell, which I guess is
Yeah,
a security mechanism just in case he would have tried something. They would have just suffocated him to death by just removing all the oxygen.
Yeah, so Magneto was so confused by this because he thought that they just straight up Shield tried to kill him apparently
Yeah,
when this place went down.
it would be funny. Like he goes like, "Ah, oh, these humans are pressing me. They're trying to kill me." And the guy comes and is like, "No, that's completely by accident. You can go back to reading your magazine, going to sleep, or whatever."
This is just another point for Magneto's cause. He's like, the humans tried to kill me in my cell. They tried to deprive me of oxygen.
God's gift to man. They try to take it away from me. Well, like, and to be fair, this also just shows how deadly Norman is. Is that like he is at the same level as like Magneto as a threat.
Yeah, no, he's a big threat. And I think they emphasize too in this comic, they say especially Osborn and Octavius, the Goblin and Doc Ock, are the biggest threats.
Yeah.
Because not only are they super powerful, but they're geniuses as well. The rest of them do have big firepower, except for Kraven, of course. Electro and Sandman are super dangerous. But Osborn and Octavius are dangerous in many different ways.
I love how they just point out that at the moment they don't have any real counters to Electro.
Yeah, or really any of them, honestly, at this point, other than the power dampening collars. Then we cut to Peter waking up and he's being held captive by the villains, and Kraven is pissed and he punches Peter and he's like, I can't believe it was a stupid kid, you ruined my life. But then Osborn and Octavius just like throw Kraven off to the side and put him in his place, and they're like, you're clearly the weakest of the groups, you should not be acting out. Which is like, damn, shut down again, poor Kraven.
I know, even the other villains don't give him respect.
Yeah, nobody respects Kraven in this. He's such a joke in this.
Yeah. I forgot where they said, but they say something interesting, and where they go like, all our genetics are mostly stable now, except Otto's, where they go like, it's still in flux. Like his body is still changing, which is interesting. And I know Ultimates. I'm not sure if you know or the readers know. This is a big spoiler. It does later reveal like Otto's powers are not what you expect. But it's like interesting when they point this out. They go like, no, his like it's still in flux. Is what they say.
Yeah, maybe that's his relationship to the arms adapting or something like that. I don't know.
It's crazier. But I don't think.
Oh, you know what it means?
Yeah, I know what it means.
Oh, I'm excited for this. Yeah,
should
I'm
we
excited to
censor
see
what I'm gonna say, or just not say it?
I mean, I want to be surprised when I reread it. So
yeah,
we'll see.
Yeah,
I want the audience to be surprised too.
Yeah.
But yeah, then Osborn starts talking to Peter, and he goes on this whole thing about how he created him, and you're like my pride and joy, and you're my boy. That's what he means when he calls him my boy, because that was like a genetically manipulated spider that bit Peter. And he's talking about how Peter's been looking up to the wrong people, teaching you the wrong things, like Nick Fury. And it's this really creepy, manipulative speech. And he's like, you're going to be one of us, and I'm going to show you the right way to do things, and we're going to take back what's ours from Fury, basically.
Yeah, and it's weird because he's showing himself and Peter as victims. Like, we're victims of Fury, and to be fair, both of them are victims of Fury. But also, like, you are just, but also Norman, you're worse. And the other interesting thing is like, a mother and a father make a child. Me and Otto made you, so we are your real mother and father. I'm like,
yeah, that's so weird.
But the way they talk is also like, yeah, they're crazy, but they're lucid crazy. They're like psychopathic crazy. They're geniuses, and like, and that's something I always feel like I keep saying this. It's like Otto Norman, yeah, like they're dangerous, but they're very standard supervillains. Until you factor in that they're geniuses. They're manipulative. They're like, the danger of them to Spider-Man to the world always came from the fact that they were like evil geniuses, you know.
Yeah, I think Osborn even addresses that in this storyline. He's like, I wasn't thinking so clearly the last time. I was going through a phase the last time I saw you. But now it feels like every time he's become the Goblin, he's become more and more lucid, and that's made him even more dangerous every time.
Same with Octavius. Like, he went from like unthinking madman to like an evil James Bond villain, you know?
No, exactly.
Yeah.
And then, but Peter still has the balls and the courage to like break free of his restraints and basically just tell them all to like go to hell, like fuck off, like you're all crazy and you're nuttier than a nutty nut bar and all this stuff. But of course, Norman threatens Aunt May's life, so he's kind of got Peter in a checkmate position where he's like, all right, well, I can't let him hurt Aunt May. So now Peter has to do, he's been blackmailed into doing whatever Norman and the rest of the group want. But what he doesn't know is that at the same time, Aunt May is being held by S.H.I.E.L.D. And I thought this is really funny because this is very different from the original Sinister Six story in the comics where they take they take Aunt May and Betty Brant hostage. And the whole time Aunt May is like having tea with Doc Ock and she has no idea what's happening because she's just this clueless old woman. She's
Mm-hmm.
like, I don't understand any of this. She thinks Doc Ock is a nice man and everything. And this is very different. This is like, oh, she's being held in protective custody by Shield because the villains are threatening her life.
But
But she's also very aware of the situation, unlike the original version. And she's like, guys, get me out of here. Get me to Peter. Why can't you take me to Peter? Why can't you tell me where he is?
she does a Karen. She goes like, "Take me to your manager."
Yeah, literally. She will later threaten to sue them too, which
Yeah,
is a big, not just a Karen move, but a big parent move. I
yeah,
think when you mess around with their kids, she's like, "Show me Peter now."
yeah. It's also really interesting because the reason Shield doesn't tell her everything is because Fury is basically, well, to be fair, he's covering his own ass, but he's trying not. He tells, however, I'm gonna try to not let it reveal that you're Spider-Man, which is a solid.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, Fury does it in a way that's very cool. That it's like, oh, this is a threat to Peter without revealing, oh, Peter's Spider-Man, and it makes sense, I guess, for Aunt May too. That because Peter was friends with Harry, Harry's Norman's son, so there would be some connection there at least.
Yeah.
So it's done in a way that protects Aunt May without spilling the beans.
Mm-hmm.
But meanwhile, Captain America is still mad at Fury for trying to replicate the super soldier serum. And Fury's like, hey, it's not even about you. Crazy, greedy men are always going to try and grab power somehow. It just happened to be through genetics, but it could have been through any means. And then he's like, oh, I know what he's going to do. It's true because then the Sinister Six just go straight for the White
Or White
House. But
House.
luckily, the Ultimates are waiting for them and they're like, hey, you're trespassing. So there's a big showdown that comes in the next issue, in issue number 6, a big fight on the White House lawn. This is like the big fun action blockbuster stuff that is also very enjoyable about this event that I like.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why I really like these issues. They're very much a mix of really strong action. The story's really solid, and the action I think is just solid, absolutely solid.
Yeah, there's some fantastic character moments and
Yeah,
it's just really, yeah, it's a lot of fun. And this fight is going on between the Ultimates and the Six, and Peter's just standing there paralyzed because he's actually caught in the middle.
yeah.
And then Peter is taken by Norman and he's like, make yourself useful. And he throws him at
Like
Captain
Captain
America.
America, and he fights Captain America. Captain America goes, "What are you doing, kid?" And he goes like, "My aunt's in danger." And he goes like, "No, she's not. She's with Shield."
Yeah. And he's like, your aunt is safe. And Peter's like, oh, okay. And so he's like, you know what? And so he just starts going to town on Norman and open up a can of whoop ass on him. And it's very satisfying. Of course, he's interrupted by Doc Ock, who throws him into the White House window. But it's a really fun scene where Peter looks up after being thrown through the window and he's like, huh, the Oval Office.
Yeah,
He's just an ordinary teenager who happened to get these powers and wind up again in these situations where, oh, I'm in the White House.
yeah,
That's insane.
yeah. He sees a resolute desk and it's empty.
Yeah, like it's pretty cool. So then during the fight, the Wasp also just flies straight into Doc Ock's throat and zaps him from in there.
Yep. I think he falls down, gets knocked out, and spits her out. And she goes like, "Elle, I'm covered in gingivitis."
Yeah, it's pretty nasty.
Nasty. And so Stark the whole time is trying to get the genetic code sequence to shut down the Sinister Sixes. Actually, it's not even Sinister Six because there's actually only 5 of them. Now that I think about
Yeah,
it.
I keep referring to them too as the Sinister Six, but it is just 5 of them
Yeah.
and Spider Man, who's been blackmailed into being there and now is no longer with them.
um, the Iron Man the whole time is like trying to figure out. I think he actually gets shut because he says Electro and Thor's fighting just shut down the electronics and they can't get this genetic code sequence to shut down their powers. But right when Kraven's about to attack Spider-Man, which honestly it probably wouldn't be a big deal if he succeeded, the
No.
the code sequence gets back online.
Yeah, so Iron Man is able to use the genetic code sequencer to shut down the villain's powers, most of them anyways. So he takes down Sandman, and Doc Ock's already out, takes out Kraven, and then Electro and Thor are fighting in the air, and then yeah, Norman's the only one left, really. He's screaming and he's going on about how it's going to be such an honor to kill Captain America, and he
Mhm.
wants Fury and all this. And then in a big shocking moment, actually, Harry shows up, his
Yeah,
son, and he's like, Dad, you need to stop. And that's like the big cliffhanger ending going into the final issue of this series. But it's like a big like OMG moment, which I honestly totally forgot about, that Harry just showed up to stop him.
yeah,
And in this moment, when he manages to calm down Norman, even though Norman's like, "Oh, using my own son against me," but Harry's like, "No, I came here on my own. You need to stop this." And he manages to calm Norman down, but then Iron Man, of course, takes advantage of the moment and hits Osborn with a neutralizer.
yeah.
And then Osborn starts lashing out, and I was like, "Oh, Tony, always making things worse, huh?" But luckily, after he lashes out, everyone's able to like just fire down on Osborn and like take him out. Like
Yeah.
everyone just throws everything they've got at him and takes him down.
I think I don't remember if it's Fury or Captain America was like, Tony, hold off. We think Harry might calm him down, but Stark just goes, "No, I got it ready." Zap.
And it totally gave me flashbacks to Avengers versus X-Men. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
I'm talking about when Iron Man split the Phoenix Force into 5 pieces with his stupid device.
Hey man, that's really hard to do. I'll be honest. I don't care if it's the solution. If I had a device I could split a god into 6 different pieces, why wouldn't you?
He didn't even intend to do that. He was just being stupid.
Well, it's still cool. It's like, have you heard of geoengineering, Nabeel?
Oh, I don't think I can get into this.
Okay, it's this idea that if we modify the climate of the planet to stop climate change, it might work. It might cause disaster and just cause climate change to accelerate at an unforeseen level. In fact, not just will it cause heating, it might just cause entire areas to freeze over. But it's kind of cool, so we might as well try it. It's like, hey man, maybe introducing dinosaurs isn't the right idea, but it's cool. Why shouldn't we push science to its limit?
You know, you, this is why you would definitely create the Green Goblin and Doc Ock and Electro and Sandman and all these people. You would definitely be one of those shield scientists. You would be Nick Fury being like, yeah, why shouldn't we?
Oh, look. And Nick Fury makes a point. Look, if we don't make Green Goblin, maybe the Chinese will make Green Goblin, or the Russians. Do you want the communists to have the Green Goblin on their side?
Oh, you're going to use propaganda to
Damn right
like
I'm gonna
achieve your
use
goals?
propaganda.
Oh my
Hell yeah.
gosh. Oh man. Well, anyways, after they take down Osborn, then there's a big flash of lightning in the sky, and they're like, "Oh, is it Thor or Electro?" And I'm like, "Dude, of course it's Thor. He's a god. Of course he's gonna take down Electro." And it is Thor, obviously. So Electro's down. So everyone's like, the fight's over. Peter's trying to comfort Harry, but Harry's like, "I swear I'll kill you all for this," which is pretty concerning coming from a teenage boy. We'll see the repercussions of that later on in the series, but Harry's not in a good place now. This
Yeah.
is a bad sign.
Yeah. Spider-Man apologizes. He goes, "I'm gonna kill you all. I'm gonna kill you all."
Yeah, I'm like, ooh, that's not good. I love your Harry impression, by the way. That was very good.
Well, Harry has is completely different depending on the meeting. You could go the James Franco route, you could do like these spectacular Spider-Man route where they just made him a massive nerd. And he goes, "I'm gonna kill you all."
Oh, I live for your impressions. Then there's a big speech coming from the White House about the attack and about how it was like a domestic terrorism on the White House. But of course, they're like, no, there was no mutant involvement. This was not a mutant thing, which is like, that's great. Steer clear from any mutant prejudice and hate. That's like an ideal world you're living in there.
Yeah.
But then people are like, what about the reports of the vigilante known as Spider Man there? And they're like, Spider Man operates in New York. We cannot confirm any involvement with the vigilante known as Spider Man. We just thank the Ultimates for saving the day. So they're sweeping it under the rug. Spider Man had nothing to do with this. And basically, all the villains are like, they cut to them, almost all of them just selling out Norman. Electro is like trying to sell out. He's like, oh yeah, I was helping the Ultimates. I was planning on taking down Osborn myself. I was biding my time. Me and Thor worked together to take him down. And Craven's like, yeah, I was under mind control.
That would have been a great story if Electro just at the last minute was like, "I'm an Avenger."
Yeah, that would be a huge twist.
Isn't
Because
that
Elektra's a huge scumbag.
I feel like it could work in the MCU where you get like Jamie Foxx Electro, and he
It
does
could
have
have,
his
yeah.
cool.
I could see Jamie Foxx's Electro having a redemption arc for
Yeah,
sure, because he was a good person at the beginning.
yeah. Well, I mean, he was a
A
creepy person.
little,
He
a
just
little creepy, a little obsessive, but
yeah,
like
he had a good
he
heart.
just, yeah, he had a good heart deep down.
Yeah,
He had some issues he needed to work out, but he was a good guy. And Hank Pym is stable and recovering, and Wasp is checking in on him.
yeah. She cares for him, which is yeah.
Yeah, deep down, even though it's realistic for abusive relationships, she should just like move on. But it's hard to when you've loved someone, even if they have hurt you that way.
And also, it is kind of like if she gives him a second chance, it might be at least in here. It seems like he's actually changing because we know he's getting medicated. He is transforming, and maybe she sees a thing in him.
Yeah, but that's just because he's changing for the better doesn't mean she needs to get back with him or she's obligated to.
Yeah, yeah,
But yeah, then there's a great moment where Peter is finally released and the Shield agents are like, yeah, Aunt May doesn't know your secret identity. She thought that you were being held in a cell nearby. So the two of them reunite, and of course Aunt May's being just a parent and being like, show me Peter, I'm gonna sue you all.
yeah,
But they reunite and they're like, let's get out of here. And so it's a happy ending for those guys.
yeah.
And meanwhile, yeah, Norman is in custody. The Goblin is locked up tight. And Cap honestly thinks they should just kill him. He's like, put a bullet in his head. I'm like, damn, that's dark.
Hey, he's from World War II. He doesn't know any better.
That's some like old school, yeah, shit.
I
But
mean, that's what we did to the Nazis, you know.
yeah, so, but Fury's like, no, we got to analyze him.
We gotta keep his
And
formula. We could use it.
you have learned nothing, dude, from any of this. You've learned nothing.
My favorite though is earlier they're like Otto is in captivity and he goes like, "What'd you do to my arms?" And like we turned it to scrap. He goes, "I can feel them. I swear I can feel them." And they leave the guards leave the room. They go, "Hey, the arms are just 30 miles away. Maybe we should move them further."
Yeah, no, that was very funny. But then, yeah, at the end, the story ends with Cap giving Fury a really hard truth. He's like, it's the men of power and influence who determine what the wars will be, who will be fighting them. They're the ones who will them into existence.
Yeah,
And it's a very ominous ending and very thought provoking. They keep talking about a genetic arms race and a genetic warfare, but in reality, it's people like Fury all around the world in these different countries. And I think it's very true to real life that determine what the war will be, who will be fighting it, and what weapons they will be using. It's like, you think about the Cold War, even going back to the 20th century, like all about nuclear arms and stocking up on
oh,
those.
yeah,
And it's really the people in power who are determining that.
yeah. And that is the big theme of the Ultimate comics I've been trying to do is like, no, we are in like is that these characters are they're not realizing they're in the genetic arms war, but like Fury is kind of pushing, though it kind of honestly seems like no one is pushing for like these genetic experiments except Shield. Like we don't find out if like the Russians or the Chinese are doing this.
Yeah.
We don't know. I don't think Latveria is doing it later when Latveria becomes a thing, and it's already been a thing in the comics. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, other countries in like X-Men, for example, have experimented with mutants and
Yeah.
genetics in that way, but they haven't been illegally genetically mutating people in the same way that Shield and Fury have been doing and have been getting outside contracts from Oscorp to do,
Yeah.
or Hammer Industries or things like that.
Yeah. You know, like I kind of said this earlier, where like Shield's big thing is like to prevent this, but so far in Ultimate Comics, they kind of created or intensified pre-existing problems. Like
Mm-hmm.
they kind of created Osborn by like, yeah, they gave him the contract, but then they could have fixed it by just ending it there. But they keep trying to keep these guys around and in positions where they could then escape, just because like, oh, if we put them in these specific positions, we'd learn more. And it kind of
Yeah.
reminds me of like there's so many universes out there where like there's this big organization and it's supposed to do good or do whatever, and it just makes the problem worse. Like Arkham Asylum makes people in Gotham worse. Stark Enterprises in the MCU causes half the problems in Marvel. And there's also like
Yeah.
the Captain America formula is like the big driving thing in like Ultimates, because it's like it indirectly leads to Hulk and Green Goblin. Though I feel in the MCU they kind of gotten over the formula somehow.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't a plot line that is the crux of this storyline and so much of the Ultimate Universe, and also the MCU, is that trying to replicate the super soldier serum and failing and then repeated attempts, and it just gets worse and worse and worse, and people just don't learn their lesson about tampering with things that they don't really understand and things that they've seen are dangerous and harmful to the public, but they keep trying and it just keeps making things worse. And I think that leads back to Sharon Carter's point at the beginning of this story, Ultimate Spider-Man 46, where she's like, we have to stop. Like, we keep thinking we're going to get it right, but it just keeps turning into more and more of a horror show and a freak show.
Yeah. And it kind of seems she's right, but also she's participating in that system.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she doesn't have much of a leg to stand on that. This was a very fun crossover. I thought it also had a lot of big ideas like we were talking about. I love seeing Spider-Man interacting in the world of the Ultimates and seeing how he, at the end of the day, is just a kid in this much larger world, like a strong, fast, agile kid with incredible powers, and he's fought so many like dangerous villains and come out on top, but at the end of the day he is just a kid caught in the middle of all this. I think was something that was so interesting about this story and what I really enjoyed, and how his villains in this universe are such a big threat that the Ultimates needed to be called in to deal with it. It was a good twist on the whole Sinister Six concept too, making Spider-Man the Six. I thought that was such a clever idea.
Because I think people really don't like the Peter Parker syndrome these days, but I feel with Ultimates, this was when they kind of do it because it's such a smaller universe. They're able to do it in a way that's a bit more concise. And like reading Ultimates is like a side note. There's a lot of concepts I don't like in comics, and that I feel a lot of literary people are critical of comics for. But I feel with Ultimates, where a lot of these concepts get started or get big for the first time, or for like one of the beginning times, they do it a little better because it's the original. It's a lot more concise and smaller. They will, yeah. And I think it makes sense to include Spider-Man as a Sinister Six member, even if he doesn't want to be, because he's in this world where like all these guys revolve around him. So of course they want to drag him, and he did kind of start this, even if he didn't mean to start this genetic arms race accidentally, by proving like, oh, you could have this viable, superhuman, heroic, super soldier-esque character,
Yeah, and I think he proved that by accident. This wasn't even supposed to happen to him. They didn't even try to experiment on him or do this thing to him. It was just a random chance of fate that the spider bit him. And it had more to do with him learning the lesson that with great power comes great responsibility and just being a good person that made it a success. Because you look at all these other guys like Green Goblin, Doc Ock, Electro, Sandman, Craven, none of them are really good people. And they're all kind of messed up in their own way. And maybe things could have been better if they had a stronger foundation like Peter, or if they'd made better choices, or just better circumstances, or were just good people like him.
Yeah.
So I think that is also at the heart of this too.
Yeah.
Is that it works for someone like Peter or for like Steve Rogers because they're fundamentally good people.
Oh,
that's the important part of it.
Ultimate Steve Rogers is not fundamentally good. He's just not insane or psychopathic.
Yeah.
Let's be fair.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think they tone it down a little when Bendis writes him in Ultimate Six. I think in this story, he feels a lot more like mainline Captain America than he did in the first Ultimate series.
I think a big thing about Ultimate Marvel, even more so than regular Marvel, is that you're getting these people who are genetically modifying their body and becoming very much ridiculously overpowered. And that's contrasted a bit with mutants. But like with these people is that by modifying their bodies and getting powers, they are not, and no one really is aware of these, what the consequences are of doing this, of genetically modifying yourself. Yeah. Like even now, we're talking about genetically modifying food and some bodies from medicine, and we still really are only just grappling with the consequences of it. It's always like consequences that are unexpected. So I'm studying agriculture in school right now. I'm going back to school for it. And a big thing with like the consequence of genetically modifying food is that it's not like we used to think, oh, it's going to give you cancer. Well, it's not. We don't think that's the consequence of it now. But but it was the consequence of genetic food is that like as well, it might accidentally cause environmental collapse or food collapse because of how we're making clones. Like it's always stuff you don't expect. Like, we're trying to create the super soldier serum. Well, we created the Hulk, the Green Goblin, whatever Electro and Doctor Octopus are supposed to be. Like those are the consequences you don't expect.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think they don't anticipate any of these consequences and they don't see what the problem is going to be. And then it's too late at that point
Yeah.
when they've done it. It gives you a lot to think about. I think this is a good combination of like fun action and good character moments along with like interesting themes. And it's like, I feel like this is like the pinnacle of like, this is what Ultimate is about, you know?
Yeah.
And I also want to shout out, by the way, like the artwork in this, like mainly the covers by John Cassidy, RIP, are so well done. I love the covers to this. Each one of him like fighting a different villain, of Spider-Man, I should say, fighting a different villain. I thought the artwork there is great. The first issue by Joe Quesada I thought was really well done as well. And I love the art just in general throughout the interiors by Trevor Hairsign. I thought it was pretty good. Yeah, I thought the artwork was great. The writing was great. I love these crossovers. They bring the Ultimate Universe together in a more cohesive way. Any other thoughts, Josh?
I don't. I think I said my piece. I think I said too much of my piece.
I think you said like just enough, honestly. I don't think you could ever say too much. I think you had some amazing thoughts on this series.
Gracias.
But yeah, it was a lot of fun. If you guys want to talk to us about the series or write in or ask us questions about ourselves or the comics we read or just say anything at all, you can email us. Josh, what's our email?
Our email is ultimatecomicspodcast@gmail.com. That is podcast. That is comic. Sorry, with the S at the end. So not Ultimate Comic Podcast. It's Ultimate Comics Podcast @gmail.com. And I know I don't say the letter T, so like it is just Ultimate Comics plural podcast singular @gmail.com.
That's right.
Yeah.
Don't get it twisted.
Don't get it twisted, homie.
Yeah. And if you guys want to follow us on Instagram, our Instagram is Ultimate Comics Podcast, exactly as Josh said that. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. Just watch some of our reels with clips from our episodes. You can like our photos and comment on those, follow us and interact with us, and look at our stories, vote on our polls, things of that nature. It's a lot of fun. Thanks to all of our followers. I love you guys. And yeah, that's it for this episode. Next time we're talking about, finally, Ultimate Fantastic Four.
Yeah!
We're going to be covering the first 6 issues, that first arc. So I'm very excited. I've been anticipating this for a while.
Wait.
So
this is, as someone who's read it before, it's been a while. This is the basis for the Fan4stick movie. Should we also watch the Fan4stick movie?
No.
Have you watched the Fan4stick movie?
I will not watch it.
Whoa!
I refuse.
This is essential research.
I refuse. I love the original Fantastic Four movies. I'm looking forward to the new one as well. I will not watch Fan4stick. I refuse.
None of the Fantastic Four movies have been good so far.
Yeah, but at least the first couple were fun.
Okay.
Anyways, we'll get more into this in our next episode. But yeah, Ultimate Fantastic Four 1 through 6. Be there, be square. It's going to be a great time. Ciao, guys.
Ciao.
Adios.
Adios and ciao.
Woo.